There's no question that the biggest trend in podcasting in the kind of 9 years that I've been doing this is video. Video is the question on everyone's mind. I was talking with a client the other day who has a podcast that's been going for 13 years, and just now they're adding video to it. And to me, that's a testament to how powerful kind of the force of video in your podcast is to the kind of content and distribution and audience building. And in this video, we're going to talk about how the heck you do video podcasting. How do you distribute it to all the places that it needs to be? And how do you think about, like, if I can't do video yet, how do I get my podcast in those channels where video is the thing? Let's dive in. Hey there, Craig Hewitt here. Welcome back to the Castos channel. Today, we're talking about video. I am super bullish on video. So take what I say with a grain of salt, right? I think you have to understand the perspective of all the advice you hear online. But as a person who's been podcasting for a long time, run a podcasting company, video is super interesting to me. I take it very, very seriously, and we'll talk about why later. But in this video, we're going to talk about how you can get a video podcast live and in all of the directories and destinations that you need it to be. You know, video is such a great kind of complement and extension of podcasting. The lines definitely are a little blurred these days. You know, someone says, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel and I'm going to have a podcast because of it. Or I want to start a podcast that's video format and I'm going to publish it to YouTube. And I think a lot of the confusion that folks have is like, how do I get this piece of content that I'm recording right now into the places where my audience can listen or watch? And that's really the question that we're going to answer today. So just for context, we're talking about long form video. We're not talking about shorts that you might put on something like YouTube Shorts or TikTok or Instagram. We're talking about long form video. And really, when you think about it, there's three kind of ways and places that you need to distribute video content for your podcast. And because we're talking about podcasting, the first place we'll talk about is your podcast host. Castos is a podcast hosting platform. We do support video podcasting. I think this is an important distinction because Castos is one of only a couple of podcast hosting platforms out there that supports video. So it's likely that the place you're hosting your podcast right now, or that you may be thinking about hosting it, won't accept video. And so you'll have to come up with an entirely different solution for how to distribute your video podcast to directories like Apple Podcasts. So Castos supports video. And in podcast distribution, your podcast will go via conventional RSS feed kind of mechanism to places like Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Pocket Casts mobile app. Additionally, there are some other directories like iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and a couple of others. We'll have a full list in the description below that will take your video and repurpose it down to audio. So that's something to be said. But if you want to publish a video podcast to a platform like Apple Podcasts, which is definitely kind of like the biggest of the conventional podcasting directories, you got to have a host like Castos that supports video, and you publish it via conventional RSS feed to those platforms. YouTube is the other big question that folks have. It's like, hey, how do we get my podcast on YouTube, my video podcast on YouTube? And for a lot of folks, the answer is like, okay, you got to go, upload it to YouTube manually, and you got to distribute it, separately there. And in all, we're going to talk about 3 different places and ways that you have to distribute a video podcast. But if you're hosting your video podcast with Castos, we have a direct integration with YouTube to where when you publish your video podcast on Castos, we can automatically send that over as a new YouTube video to your channel. So if you're wanting to streamline your kind of publishing workflow and everything, you can publish once to Castos, and that takes a kind of conventional RSS distribution to places like Apple Podcast and Pocket Cast and Podcast Addict and some of those places that support video. It also sends that over to YouTube as a brand new video for your channel. YouTube is definitely an important bucket that you have to think about. Video, YouTube, they're synonymous. You got to have your video on YouTube, whether you want to call it a YouTube channel or a YouTube video or a podcast episode. I think the nomenclature isn't quite as important, but YouTube is a super important destination for video. If you're hosting with Castos, we automatically can send that video over to YouTube for you as well. If you're not, you should be. But if you're not, then you got to upload that video separately to YouTube. So just so you know. And then the third bucket, if you will, that I'll put how to distribute video podcast content into is Spotify. So Spotify is a bit of a unique beast in the podcasting world in that they won't accept an RSS feed and video content from a platform like Castos. And this is not our fault or a lack of functionality on a platform like ours, but it's that since Spotify purchased the platform previously known as Anchor, which they call Spotify for podcasters now, they only accept podcast content from Anchor or Spotify for podcasters. So if you want a video podcast to be on Spotify, you have to publish it through Spotify for podcasters. And there's really no way around this. Fortunately, it's free. You can just sign up. It's podcasters.spotify.com, and you have to publish your content there. The other kind of downside of this is that it won't go anywhere else, right? So Spotify has created a bit of a walled garden in that content on Spotify for podcasters in video format cannot be republished or syndicated over to places like Apple Podcasts via conventional RSS feeds. Kind of a bummer, but that's how it is. So just wanted to share there are really three ways and places that you should think about distributing your video podcast content, right? Via RSS feed to places like Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Podcast Addict, right? And those get distributed down to places like iHeartRadio and a few others in audio format. YouTube, which if you're hosting your video podcast with Castos, we send it to YouTube for you. So that's awesome. And then Spotify for podcasters takes care of Spotify for video content. So YouTube, podcasting, video, all really important. I know we all want to be everywhere all at once. And I just want to share, I'm super bullish on video. I think especially as we're in this era of AI and virtual reality, we have to look at how defensible and maybe even how valuable audio only content is. You got to believe that, text was kind of first thing that AI really took over. Audio and video maybe next, but I think video is going to be the hardest for AI to really compete with in a genuine way because there's just so much more information going on here. You're able to see my face and my expression and my backdrop and my lighting, and you kind of know me because you can see everything that's going on here. Whereas if you just listen to my voice, you have a lot deeper connection to me than you do by reading a blog post or something. But there's no doubt that video is kind of the richest experience. And so there are a lot of folks out there who say, I know video is important, but I just can't do it. It takes too much time. It costs too much. I just can't, I can't afford $100 a month for something like Castos for video hosting. And to that, I say, I totally get it. And we have a good solution for that, which is if you want a presence for your podcast on video platforms like YouTube, we have a great feature called YouTube Republishing, where we take an audio podcast and convert it to video format and publish it to your YouTube channel for you. So this is available on our growth and our pro plans. And so for folks who say hey, I want to have my podcast in video format on YouTube. And so this is not taking into account what's going on with YouTube podcasts because frankly, nobody knows, right? As of April 1st here today, 2024, nobody knows what's going to happen there. But if you say, hey, YouTube's the biggest search engine for kind of rich multimedia content, I want to be there. I want to have a strong presence for my podcast. YouTube republishing from Castos is the answer to that if you're only recording audio content. So as you're thinking about your content strategy, I would just ask you to really strongly consider using video. We're really big into it. We publish a lot of video here on the channel. And we would just ask, if you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, smash the bell, ring the button. And if you have any questions about video podcast content format distribution, drop a comment in below, answer every single one of them that I can, and we're here to help you in any way that we can. So until next time, happy podcasting.